What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Mooncast. We're your hosts, Riley,
Macie, Katie,
and we're here to give you the raw and real talk about cannabis, lifestyle, mindfulness, and everything in between. So grab a moon doobie, spark up with us, find a cozy spot, and tune in for this month's episode. All right, welcome back to the Mooncast. We have a very special guest here today.
the specialist of guests.
It's our dad. Dad, do you want to introduce yourself? We've got you here. We want to hear about your background, a little bit about you, how you became Jason Queen.
Well, number one, we always told you I was your dad, but whoever that bastard is owes me a lot of money.
It may or may not be our actual dad.
Right.
Yeah.
That's right. I guess I'm Jason, their dad. And what do you want to know? Gosh, was in law enforcement for 20 years and retired out of that in 2014-ish. Because I promised your mom all those years, 20 years and out. And so 20 years to the day, got out of law enforcement. I did a little bit of everything in law enforcement, did deputy sheriff right out of college, worked on a narcotics task force, federal narcotics task force for a few years. And then when we had you, switched to no more undercover type drug buy work.
Yeah.
And
Mom probably.
Mom put a stop to that.
put the old to that. And then went to the DNR as a natural resource policeman. Did that for 5 or 6 more years and did a little bit of everything in law enforcement.
Yeah, that was probably a little bit more low key being in the DNR compared to
Yeah.
What was your
Federal
favorite?
task
What
force.
was your favorite part? Like, what was your favorite thing that you were in law enforcement? Like the undercover stuff.
Yeah, that. And I like the DNR because it's self-motivated and you get paid to hunt and fish a lot.
Yeah,
So.
that's nice.
Nice.
Yeah, well, we wanted to do this podcast episode today because Dad does have a huge background in law enforcement, and a lot of people love the irony of me and Macie now being in the cannabis industry, and actually Dad's in the cannabis industry, and he was the person behind all of this. So we thought that it would be really cool to sit down and talk to him about how he transitioned from all of these like federal jobs, working in task forces and ensuring that people don't smoke marijuana into being an advocate for the industry. So yeah, we're going to jump into that. And Dad, why don't you talk a little bit about how you transitioned from being in law enforcement to being an entrepreneur? So Dad, in addition to being in law enforcement and those type of things, has always been like a huge entrepreneur throughout our lives and has owned a million different businesses. And yeah, talk about like why you did that.
You know, I've owned different businesses since I was 19 years old. What do we call that? Serial entrepreneur.
Yeah, that's definitely what you are.
And a lot of people always said, you know, what business do you like? And I'd always tell them I like business.
Right.
It's not really any particular business. It's just business as a whole. And I always love hearing people's ideas about opening businesses. And then kind of in my mind going, oh, that's a good idea, or, oh, hell, that won't work. You know, just hearing people's ideas and you know, helping them out if I can, giving them advice if I can. But, you know, when I was in law enforcement, and I always joke that law enforcement was a hobby to pay our insurance, you know, but I love law enforcement, love the camaraderie of it, just like military, you know, you make the best friends you'd ever make anywhere that would die for you, literally, without question. And so it was hard to hang that up. You know, I've owned businesses anywhere from a chain of convenience stores to a construction company to a granite countertop business. Gosh, I built spec houses for sale. So construction, gosh, what else? Build
Daycare.
a daycare facility one time.
That's
Mulch.
crazy.
Did that.
Mulch.
Mulch. Owned a liquor store.
Yeah.
So it's just one of those where when the right opportunity came along, it wasn't that I ever thought I'd be in the liquor store business or selling granite and fabricating granite. It's just the opportunity came along, and, I was like, well, shoot, if there's nobody around to do it or whatever, I can do it better.
Yeah.
Hey, let's jump in. And, we've failed at a couple, and that's part of being a good business person. You learn more from failing than you do from being successful. So I definitely don't say I'm the best business person in the world, but I've had a lot of fun doing it. And
That's what counts.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
it's exciting. It's like an exciting thing to be a part of. And I think that failure is part of that excitement,
sure.
Knowing that could be down the road and everything is a result of your own work, or maybe just like the ever shifting thing. And
it's not
society.
like they were all like related in one same field. Like you kind of got a taste of all sorts of different things and gained experience on all sorts of different business rather than just.
Yeah. And sure, everybody wants that business that'll last a lifetime.
Yeah.
But I always kind of looked at business as a train ride. An opportunity comes along, sounds too good to be true, but hey, if the opportunity's there and you do it right, you jump on the train.
Right.
And you ride it until it ends. But when you see that train coming to an end, you're already moving forward with the next project, and you don't get bored that way. It's always something new. I've tried a lot of different things, and, I loved building houses or speccing out houses, because by the time you were bored with one, you had it sold and you were already starting another one,
right.
Different design, that kind of thing. But when I got out of law enforcement, after 20 years, I dabbled, and helped a few departments here and there with different things, but I had a security or still have a security and private investigation company. And it's funny about the transition to cannabis. So when the Farm Bill passed, I heard that, hey, there's, people are going to be growing hemp, and they're putting this hemp facility in Buchanan. There was a plan to build a big extraction facility, and all these farmers were getting on board. And somebody said, hey, you need to go talk to this guy because they'll need security there. So sure enough, I reached out and bootstrapped and talked to the guy. And I'm like, well, explain this hemp thing. I didn't know anything about hemp. What the hell is this all about? So while I was trying to get a contract with security guards, I learned, whoa, this hemp thing could be really cool. So I kind of did a bunch of research on it, and I said, well, shoot, if people are going to be making decent money, maybe we'll raise some hemp and try this. So
some hemp.
Yeah.
Some hemp. Yeah. 15,000 plants later.
Yeah. What he's not telling you is what dad likes to send it. Yeah. Instead, we bought a farm and we decided to be the extractor. We decided
not only did we grow, but we harvested and we dried and we extracted and the whole 9 yards.
Yeah. We dove in.
But why not go all in if you're going to go in?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I don't believe in limping into a business, even though sometimes that's probably the better decision. I believe in doing it right the first time and diving and, just doing your best right off the get-go. So we said, okay, let's dive in. We got this company moving into town that will buy our hemp if we raise it. And so we started growing like a lot of people did. And then while we're growing our first crop, it fell through with that company to open the extraction business. And then I'm like, well, hell, guess what? You already got all these farmers that are growing, number one. Now they don't have anybody local to sell the crops to, but we don't either. And we're growing. So let's take this opportunity and let's open an extraction facility.
We're extracting.
Yeah. So then we dove in with that. And then problem being in the first year or two, the first year was lucrative for people. We technically got in on the second year of the Farm Bill. And that's when everybody jumped in.
Right.
And that's also when COVID hit.
It was the perfect story.
Yeah. So we grew 15,000 plants, which is tremendous, a lot for your first year. And we did everything, we prepped the field with tractors, but we did all the planting by hand and with crews. And we had a great time, but the market crashed because COVID hit and so many people got into the business at the same time. We were mandated to shut down for a while because, we employed people in close quarters. It was just a mess. It was one of those out of our control scenarios.
Yeah. Luckily, though.
Yeah, if it weren't for that, we wouldn't have Moonflower. And you probably wouldn't be in the medical cannabis side of things.
Yeah.
So then it spun. You all started Moonflower.
Yeah, we had this brand that was behind this huge operation, and like our idea was to sell in bulk and all of those things. But luckily, we formed this brand that carried, personality and carried quality and all
Instead
of those
of bulk
things.
oil, we were focusing on, the more recreational and craft cannabis side of things. And we didn't need 15,000 plants to do that by any means, but
Yeah, we kind of got lucky.
I remember you all coming to me going, hey, we would like to do the retail side of this. And I thought, why in the hell would we want to, dive into that side of it and deal with, customers and a lot of headaches that come along with business. Nothing against customers, but, and I wasn't interested. So I said, hey, if you guys want to open the retail side, I'll support you however I can, jump in. And that's when you all opened Moonflower and your mom helped. And I kind of sat and watched it grow very, very quickly.
It did grow quickly.
I think COVID also kind of skyrocketed that also because everybody was, sitting at home and
our social
online
media
shopping and looking for things to help with their mental health and their physical health. And I don't know, I think COVID was kind of obviously a really shitty thing, but also something that made us
who we are. We were able to, I mean, we were so active on social media at that time, like videos constantly, lives showing every part of the process. And at the time, everybody's heads were down at their phones, just watching, and we were really able to build our brand up during that time. And although it was unfortunate for that portion of the business and how we thought we would dive into this market, like we were very lucky to see how.
And we learned everything.
Yeah, we learned so much because Dad made the decision, like, let's do it all. And that's why we're able to be a seed to sale business still to this day, is because we decided we wanted to do the extraction, the drying, the farming. And because of that, we have such a niched portion of this market because we're able to watch every single step. And so are you on social media. So,
yeah. Yeah. And it, unfortunately, the extraction, wholesale business that I started was one of those things. You can do all the research on a business. It's a perfect example. Do your due diligence, find potential investors and this and that. You think everything's going your way and it's a no-brainer. And COVID hit. Too many people got into the market at the same time. So where my end of that business crashed, your all's business flourished.
Right.
Because of COVID. Right.
But the fact that you were in with all of these different things, that opened up doors for you in the medical industry.
Yeah. So my buddies were having a great time with us growing hemp already because they're still in law enforcement and we're growing hemp. And back then, the grand majority of law enforcement didn't know anything about, okay, what's hemp compared to marijuana? Mm-hmm. And to this day, people don't realize it's the same plant.
Right.
That it looks the same. You can't tell the difference unless you send it to the lab. Mm-hmm. So the people that don't know, industrial hemp or CBD hemp they're strains that are grown for very, very little THC, but high CBD or other cannabinoids. And marijuana is the same plant, but grown little on the other cannabinoids, but high on the THC. So I'm trying to educate my buddies in law enforcement. Hey, this is not marijuana. They have a lot of fun.
I'm sure that they did.
Poke, but they're all fascinated by it, and the more law enforcement's educated, the better it gets.
Yeah, exactly. It's nice to because you have this background, we've been able to work alongside of law enforcement here locally, especially. And that's been such a great benefit. And we're working, we're working to transform the stigma in that way. And
Absolutely.
that's like such a special opportunity for us because of your background. So it's nice. I'm sure that you did catch a lot of flack. Yeah, you should tell the dryer story.
Yeah. So in year one, we were drying hemp for all different farmers. And we had this big industrial dryer with big conveyor belts. It's like a Connex size pizza oven is kind of what it would remind
massive.
you of. And anyway, we were permitted to have it and, passed all our inspections, and we were drying for farmers, and everybody harvests at the same time. So we had all these farmers coming in for a couple of weeks. Some days we're running 24-hour shifts. And my buddies in law enforcement didn't know exactly where this dryer was set up, even though the state did. And in the middle of the night, we're down there drying with the crew and living off of pizza and caffeine and
staying in a camper.
Yes, we had a camper set up and doing shift work with our
Like some
buddies.
Breaking Bad shit.
And so the smell of this cannabis drying was through all the neighborhoods and everywhere around, and it was really strong. And all of a sudden, we hear sirens and police cars start flying through the parking lot going by, and we're like, "What the hell is going on?" And all of a sudden, they come sliding in right next to where we were, and they see me, and they're like, "Oh, hell," So they had gotten a call that, look, there's some big marijuana action going on over here. We
Some
smell
kingpin
it.
level stuff.
Yeah, you can smell it through half the city. And so they didn't realize it was us till they slid in there and jumped out.
They probably thought they were on to something big break.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. So we had a great time with it, and they hung out and drank Gatorade with us and had
Gatorade.
a laugh over it. Yeah. But so it's been a big thing educating law enforcement, because my generation was brought up, marijuana's bad. There's nothing good about it. It's a Schedule I narcotic, and growing up, you saw all these stone junkie videos they showed you, and there was just nothing.
Your brain
good.
on drugs with the little egg.
Oh yeah, egg find, right? and granted, most law enforcement, simple possession, they weren't really worried about. When I worked narcotics, it was, pills were getting big at the time. Marijuana was still a thing, but we didn't mess with it unless it was bulk. Somebody was dealing in pounds of it. We would work those cases, but the average law enforcement officer, even at that time, wasn't stressed out about somebody having a joint or a small amount of marijuana, unless somebody talked themselves into a ticket,
right?
Which happens all the time by somebody running their mouth just to run it. But luckily to this day, now law enforcement, and myself included, opened our minds a little bit and didn't just listen to the government talking about how bad it was, or the pharmaceutical companies, pushing this big agenda to sell their stuff. And so now law enforcement as a whole is pretty educated. They could be way more educated, but they understand now, hey, maybe this is actually, can have good healing properties for people that need it.
Yeah.
And pain relief for people that need it. So, luckily in the community that we live in, it's a tight-knit community, and we got great law enforcement here, and they don't mess with people. If they write a possession ticket anymore, it's because somebody really deserves a ticket.
Yeah.
We used to say, you save those kind of charges for the assholes.
Yeah.
That was always what we said. And that's how it is to today. We've got law enforcement that have come in and talked to you all, said, hey, we're proud of what you're doing.
Yeah.
And we're supportive of you. Plus a lot of the old timers that were, brainwashed back in the day, they're retiring out. You got the younger, folks moving in, and they are a little more educated, or they're used to this kind of thing.
Yeah, believe it or not, here at the store, we've had more law enforcement come in and say, hey, we're proud of you guys. Like, anytime you need anything, let us know, all of that, than even like city council members,
right.
Which has been crazy. But it's such a nice and special thing to like watch this, like people's minds opening, especially in a position like that. It's been really transformative over the last few years, the amount of education that's come out, and just like we're destigmatizing it, which is really cool.
Oh, yeah. And, you know, one of these days, I still think that, you know, my grandchildren, your all's children will look back at this and go, kind of like we do prohibition.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, we look back at my age, look back at, you know, the early days and alcohol prohibition. We're like, that was illegal. And, you know, it's almost like a crazy thought. And I still think that, you know, your all's generation and the next one will say that was illegal at one time, you know, pot and THC that has all these great things that, you know, can heal people was illegal. And you just got to understand the political climate of it. You know, the political agenda and the pharmaceutical agenda. Those are the reasons this was
That's
ever
so
banned.
true. It's just like comparative to like bars and stuff that we see nowadays. Like I feel like our kids, it would be so normalized to like cannabis lounges and all sorts of different things like that. And like being able to wrap your head around like people would be arrested for this, or, you know, this was such a big deal at one point in time, especially like the medicinal side of things. Yeah, it was the marijuana prohibition.
Yeah, we lived through it.
Well, I still get the questions from, you know, people, and right away you can see the ignorance. And I don't mean ignorance in a bad way. I mean that, you know, the true form of ignorance. People just don't do their homework. So, and like we used to be, you know, we just took what government told us as, hey, it's the government. They got to be right. Yeah, we all know better than that now.
Right.
But so we still get people that'll, you know, come to me and say, you mean you're for cannabis? I'm like, absolutely. Do your homework.
Yeah.
You know, learn what a great thing this is that, and I'm not talking about people just getting high. I'm talking about the medicinal, you know, benefits of it and the good that it does and the veterans that it helps and people that are just, you know, dying of pain and everything. And they can now get relief.
Yeah. In a medicinal way that's not full of side effects.
Exactly.
Especially in a state that's so overrun with like, you know, narcotic and opioid problems. You know what I mean? Like West Virginia is just drowning in the opioid crisis and all sorts of different things like that. So knowing what marijuana can do for those people, you know, we live in a impoverished state also. So the tax revenue and things that are possible through medical marijuana, recreational legalization, it's an important thing here. It really is.
Oh, yeah. So, you know, everybody's seen the documentaries on, you know, the big networks about the opioid crisis in Huntington, West Virginia, Cabell County, and how bad it is. And it is. But they, you know, they don't realize cannabis can help cure that.
Yeah.
Truly.
For
Truly
sure.
can. And then you got the people that say, oh, it's a gateway drug. Well, so's aspirin. You know, so's Tylenol, so's anything like that. Your
Alcohol.
first thing that you seek out for pain relief or stress relief. If you want to talk about gateway, anything's a gateway at that point. You can't say cannabis starts you down that path. It's somebody seeking, you know, a little bit of pain relief. You know, people get hooked on pills for injuries on the job or for, you know, a whole myriad of things. So anything could be a gateway drug.
Right.
And they don't look at it that way. It goes back to the ignorance of everything they've heard. You just want to say, do some damn homework.
Yeah.
You know, be an adult and
Be an
start
adult.
reading
Look it up.
and checking up on this, and don't just rely on what you've heard.
Yeah.
You know, and you look at the opioid crisis. I wear a lot of hats, and one of them I don't want to say who I work for, but I'm a forensic medical investigator, let's call it. So I see overdoses all the time. I mean, people that get hooked on pain pills. Not everybody just is a drug addict, you know, been snorting coke and doing heroin and all this stuff. There's always a start to this.
Yeah, and most of it's prescribed by doctors when they first begin on this journey, especially with pain pills and things like that. That's pain
the
pills,
real gateway drug is going into having surgery on your wrist or something like that, and then all of a sudden
you're addicted to pain
over
pills.
your head.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And I know every time that I've ever had any kind of surgery and they say, okay, you know, for a week, here's a prescription for this. And I'm like, oh, hell no. You know, if I need it that bad, luckily I got a good pain tolerance, but if I need it that bad, I'll take some Tylenol or some, you know, some Advil or something like that. But, you know, people have a lot of back pain. You look at the work atmosphere we have in West Virginia. You got hard workers, coal miners, linesmen, loggers, timber cutters, people in real, honest to God, hardworking jobs that get injured all the time.
Yep.
And, the first thing, if they can't work, the first thing they do is go get something done at the doctor. And the doctor says, hey, sorry, but here's some pain pills that'll get you through it. So easy.
Yeah,
So easy.
when opiates actually first became a thing in the state, and those companies were looking like, how can we spread this drug? Like, how can we get this out to the masses? They actually targeted states like us. If you look, it's a lot
Coal mining country.
yeah,
that sort of
in
thing.
Appalachia, and these blue collar workers that they knew were getting injured on the job, and they knew that it would be so easy to get them hooked, and they continued upping doses, and here we are today.
And in the same state that will not legalize, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It makes no sense.
Sure.
It's cyclical.
Sure. But hopefully, the way cannabis is, we're very lucky, especially in this part of the state, that this area got approved. There's 10 grows and 10 processes for medical marijuana. Our area got approved for 2 of those growers, and there's 100 processing licenses in the state, 100 dispensary licenses, and there's about high 50s of those open already. And as the patient count grows, more of them will open. And I think in a few years, we're going to look back on this and say, wow, it's come a long way.
Yeah,
it's taken
definitely.
a long time.
It already has come a
yeah.
long way, honestly.
Yeah, and
sure.
I'm sure that the decision makers on the state level are going to start seeing that tax revenue and be like, oh,
Maybe this isn't so bad.
yeah, maybe
Well,
this
and you
isn't so
hate
bad.
to, even though we say, oh, the tax revenue, sure. But we shouldn't even be looking at it that way.
Right.
We should be looking at it as this can actually help people.
Right.
Yeah.
The tax revenue aside, the lawmakers ought to be able to look at it and go, shoot, we should not even have a tax.
Yeah.
On this.
Yeah, that's very
There should be
true.
no tax on this. It helps people. But unfortunately, you have certain lawmakers that are still funded by certain pharma and just old school mentality.
Right.
That won't do their own education. Either they're too busy or they don't have the desire to look into it. But luckily, we do have some great lawmakers that are taking the forefront, taking the lead, and saying, hey, this is good. This is a good thing. We can't look at it as all bad. Does it have bad things about it? Yes, everything does. But I have a lot of people that say, why would you be for cannabis? And I'm like, do you drink beer?
Yeah,
like,
it always comes back to alcohol.
Yeah. But I'm like, well, I do too. So, I'm not knocking on beer. I love me a good cold beer. But,
A couple of
in
Couple of
law enforcement, they always say, it goes back to law enforcement. Well, you can't enforce people. What about people getting high and driving? And I'm like, what about people getting drunk and driving?
That's the thing. I bet through the lens of a police officer, alcohol is so much more problematic than people.
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
Yeah. Would I love to, or would I rather get in a fight with a drunk that's causing a problem, or, somebody that's high on weed? Number one, they're not causing a problem.
no.
You're not going to get in a high speed chase with somebody that's high on pot. There might be a slow speed chase.
Right.
Yeah,
Where the
30
guy
miles
pulls over
per
and goes,
hour.
come on in, man. So you never have those kind of problems as far as violence or anything like that. Whereas with alcohol, hang on tight. I've been in enough fights over the years and gotten a few scars because of alcohol over the years. And I'm not saying people should get high and drive, but there's no difference. You enforce somebody being drunk driving the same way.
Yeah.
You look for the same signs, and it's no different pulling somebody over that's driving high as opposed to driving drunk. Once they get the blood tests figured out, there'll be a presumption of, okay, X amount of nanos in your blood, you're considered
Right, like a legal
high.
limit.
Yeah, a legal limit.
Right.
Just like alcohol, it's set. Once you meet that, sorry, you're over the limit.
Yeah.
But you don't need to blow over a 0.8 or a 0.1 to be DUI. People don't realize that's just the automatic point of DUI. The officer should not have to prove it once it reaches that point. Same thing with this. You don't need a blood level to be, arrested for DUI of drugs. You just need to be able to, the officer has to articulate, okay, they were bumping into the curb, or they were weaving in the road, or they run over some mailbox, whatever it would be, and do the field sobriety tests, and that's all you need. So there's no difference in forcing it. So that's not a good argument.
Right.
Yeah, and it's always the hater, like the weed haters, that are completely fine with getting drunk. You know what I mean?
Like how many times have you drank and drove your truck down a back road? Like, I don't know. It's a tough argument. One thing that I've heard of too, and I think about this, is somebody getting a DUI and them proving that there's THC in their blood, but you can actually pop hot on like a drug test in that way for having a full spectrum CBD product. So I feel like that is a hiccup that we're going to have to figure out over time. And I'm not really even sure how they would do that.
Well, but one thing you got to remember, number one, they have to have a reason to pull you over. An officer has to have probable cause. So he's not going to pull you over, for no reason. You've already done something that's put you on that radar.
Yeah.
Right.
Whether it's weaving or whatever. And then once they pull you over, they have to establish the probable cause beyond that. They have to say, okay, he looked at me and his eyes were really bloodshot, and then he was slurring his speech, or, he seemed high. So then they get you out and do field sobrieties designated just for narcotics. So you still have to mess up. It's not like they can just get you out, do a blood test and say, oh, wait, your blood's showing THC. Well, that doesn't mean anything, not anymore.
Yeah.
Like you said, CBD, a full spectrum CBD or broad spectrum can flag you, but doesn't mean you're high.
Yeah.
So we'll work through those things in law enforcement. Things are getting better and technology's getting better.
For sure.
But, I think a few more years and this will be old news.
Yeah,
Old
definitely. Do you ever feel bad for being in law enforcement? And I mean, I feel like this is a question that a lot of people want to ask, like police officers, like transitioning into this new age and new era. And we do have a problem with pre-incarceration. So incarceration of people that are still in jail, even in states that have already legalized. And how do you ever feel bad about that? And what do you think, like, what's a way that we can deal with that?
Yeah. So I don't know. I look at that a couple different ways. Number one, I respect the law. No matter what, we don't have to like it. Okay. We don't always have to agree with it. But when something's against the law, I was raised, you do the right thing.
The law is the law.
The law is the law.
Especially when you're...
But I'm not narrow-minded. Officers have discretion. That's part of their job. That's one of the tools in their wheelhouse. So just because an officer, stops somebody and finds a joint or finds a small amount of marijuana, it doesn't mean they really have to write them for that. Mm-hmm. It's called officer discretion. And fortunately, in my career, I didn't chicken shit anybody.
Yeah.
I didn't write tickets because a guy had a joint. Somebody really had to talk themselves into a ticket,
right.
For something small like that. Do I feel bad about that? No, not that. Do I feel bad as a whole that, law enforcement, just like everybody was brainwashed years and years ago? Yeah, sure. So I look at that two different ways, and I kind of feel two different ways about it. Sure, there are people incarcerated for crimes, but one thing to remember, nobody's incarcerated for having a little bit of weed.
Right,
okay. Right. At least I don't know of anybody. They were all small misdemeanors. Most of them were just tickets.
Yeah.
In states that could incarcerate over small amounts of weed, it would have been a very small amount of time.
Right.
So people always act like, oh, there's all these people in jail for, having
smoking
weed.
And
smoking weed. I'm like, nobody's in jail for smoking weed. They're in jail because they were selling it or selling quantities of it or were in possession of huge quantities of it. Those are the people that are still in jail for it. So do I feel bad about that? No. It's one thing to, back in those days to buy some weed off somebody because either, you wanted a little bit of pain management or people wanted high or something. That's one thing. But it's another thing to be dealing in pounds of it.
Right.
Okay. When the law's the law.
Yeah.
Which a lot of times came with a lot of other illegal activity.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And that's another thing. You can look at a lot of those cases and were they all just about weed? Oh, heck no.
Yeah, there was some violence and illegal firearms.
Yeah, usually
like
all
that.
Different kind of stuff went into it. Are there people incarcerated that shouldn't be? Absolutely. and that's just not about drugs. That's about everything.
Honestly, when people ask me about this, something that I always think is like, when people ask, is it right for someone to have enforced these marijuana laws and then now they're okay with it, or they use it, or they're in the industry? And I'm thinking, best case scenario, like, don't you want someone to change their mind? You know what I mean? Like,
right.
Isn't it the most important thing for this person to realize, like, hey, I was misinformed about this previously, and now I understand more about it, and I'm more educated about it. I'm like, how can you be angry at someone for learning more, and for someone to actively and consciously say, like, yeah, before, I was just misinformed like a lot of other people, but now I'm done my research, I've educated myself. Yeah, it's like, that's the best case scenario for everybody.
That's what we want.
That's what we want.
Exactly. I'm like, you should think that that's cool that somebody was able to
open their mind.
Exactly.
Well, and one thing you got to remember is the law didn't even allow anybody to study marijuana.
That's true.
Until, the Farm Bill passed, that was one of the big things. And now that some states are legalizing, now they're able to actually research and start doing some different types of research to see what the cannabinoids can do for you, and all the different cannabinoids, not just THC. But before, it was against the law. There was one university in the whole country that was tasked by the DEA for doing any kind of research, and it was very limited on what they could do.
Isn't that insane to think about? Like, why wouldn't we allow at least research and scientific studies to come out and happen?
It's like that still with so many different things.
All the barriers are definitely still there.
Yeah.
And not to be a big conspiracy theorist, but we know Big Pharma is behind a lot of this because they've stopped this. They've kept it. When they made marijuana a Schedule I narcotic, people don't realize, some people don't even understand what the difference between these schedules are. So Schedule I narcotics are heroin and cocaine and things like this that have no medical value, and they have high potential, almost probable potential for addiction. Okay. Schedule III has medicinal benefits. Okay. So II's kind of in the middle. Schedule III is more.
What else is Schedule III?
Some more mild pain management stuff, clear down. If I had to guess, I don't want to say on here and misquote it, but it's a lot lesser. Okay. It goes from Schedule I being very probable that you're going to get addicted to it or has the ability to make you addicted, to Schedule III, where it almost has no addiction. Still a chance, but no addiction. And they're going to jump from Schedule I to a Schedule III.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so where in the world did it get put Schedule I? Why? And
exactly
who made that decision?
Yeah. Okay. In case you didn't know, Congress and Biden, like we're moving. I'm pretty sure it's been signed and it's happened, right?
Well, yeah. So right now, President Biden has been pushing for it to be changed from a Schedule I to a III. I don't even believe it should be a III.
Yeah.
But hey, we take whatever steps.
We'll take what we can get.
Not that Biden's been a great help in any of all this, but politics is a whole different, whole different podcast.
We can get on another podcast.
Obviously, they've recommended it. The DEA, I think, was kind of against it in the beginning. Now, probably because of political pressure, they've said, okay, we're going to step up and we're going to transfer this. But there's steps that need to be taken. And now we're in this 60-day comment period where the citizens can get online and make the comments about this and that. In all likelihood, it's going to very convenient be changed probably beginning in November.
Yeah. If we had to guess,
to get the most
what happened in November.
For the Democratic side. So we look for that to actually change about November. If it's before that, that's great. But it's a election season. So, and along with that, cannabis banking is another great big issue. Not many people realize that, you got cannabis legal in all these states. However, it is 30 some states now. You still can't use an FDIC backed bank to put the dollars from any cannabis business whatsoever because it's still federally illegal.
Right.
So they're trying to pass the Cannabis Banking Act that will change all that. Right now, they have to be done with credit unions and not federal government backed banks. And so that'll change a lot of things too, once that passes.
You think that will have banking will come alongside of it?
Yes. I think it'll be, they've been trying to pass the Banking Act long before talking about schedule changes, but it's politics. There's no reason for this.
Can you buy stock in
Yes.
any kind of?
Yeah.
Okay. In
Alex has
cannabis,
some
yeah.
stock in
Really?
it. Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah. I wonder if that passes, if Square will take us back. Please take us back.
We
Yeah.
have been battling that like no other with Moonflower as far as banking goes, and just being able to have point of sales, different systems, different.
Yeah, we
avenues of
were using
transaction.
Square, which is a great platform, but they were cannabis haters. They said that they would allow CBD products, but they do not allow CBD
We
products.
can't even market online.
Yeah,
I
they
feel
were
like
trying
so many
to-
things like that are going to change that are going to make this a lot easier for
Yeah.
us.
Well, and some people don't realize too, banking is, with the Cannabis Banking Act, there's actually banks out there that still think they can't even have a checking account with a customer or loan a customer money on a car because they work in the cannabis industry.
Yeah,
I'm
Dad,
like,
you should
what?
tell
That
about
does-
that.
That's nuts.
Yeah, so I won't mention any banks' names, but some banks are very supportive. And granted, they know they have federal guidelines they have to stand by.
Right.
But there's still banks out there that think, oh wait, anything cannabis related, we can't lend money on, or we can't let them have a checking account. And we recently went for a loan at a bank in West Virginia, and once they found out we were in the cannabis industry, they're like, oh, we can't loan to you. And we're like, what? And they're like,
Yeah, it wasn't even a cannabis loan.
It wasn't a loan that went to cannabis, or to a business or anything. It was literally a loan for property that had nothing to do with cannabis. And they're like,
Wow.
oh, well, no, you're in the cannabis industry, so we legally
How
can't.
is that even allowed? How is
Yeah,
that even
I feel like that
ethical?
has to be discrimination or
Yeah.
something
Yeah.
like that.
And so we were even, I was like, look, obviously it's your all's ignorance because you don't know the law.
Right.
And they were actually backpedaling going, oh, we never really thought about this. And I'm like, so what? Are you going to go look at I said, there's so many people in this industry already. You have customers, whether you know it or not, that work at the dispensaries or work at the grows and
Right. You're telling me
processes,
that you guys have never given a loan to someone that works in the cannabis industry?
Yeah. And so they were like, oh, I guess we need to reevaluate that.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, no, don't backpedal.
Yeah, please don't do this.
And that was months ago, and they still haven't changed their tune. They had the time to do the research and realize they were wrong.
Right.
Yeah. So I can see turning down a loan to open a dispensary or something like that.
Yeah.
But just because somebody gets a W-2 from the industry as a worker, that doesn't stop
What? I
anything.
didn't even know this.
You didn't know about
No,
this?
that is so foul.
Yeah, even like they were questioning like dispensary workers, even like giving loans to dispensary workers and all of that because of it.
Well, at first they were even saying, "Oh, wait,
It's illegal.
You're in the hemp industry. That might be I'm like, there's nothing illegal about that,
Right.
And it just goes back to ignorance. And unfortunately, a lot of banks, their boards are old timers,
Yep.
that haven't done their research and they're still in the old mindset.
Yeah, it's like, just let us, we beg organizations like this all the time. Like, let us sit down with you for like a Q&A, like ask any question that you have and we would be happy to educate about it.
Right.
And they're not even willing to do this. Like, and even if they do, didn't you talk with them and like educate and all of that? You weren't able to?
Yep. Tried to. And luckily it wasn't the person in the loan department. It was the board. And the person in the loan department even went to him and said, look, you're wrong about this.
Yeah.
You're totally wrong. And they were like, nah, sorry.
Gotta be some
Ultimately, it's their
users.
decision. And they can say no because
Right.
it's privately
It's a
owned
private
companies,
bank.
so we just had to agree to disagree and go our separate ways. And hopefully in the future,
They'll get it.
especially when cannabis banking passes. So
Right.
once that passes, all that should be history. Another interesting fun fact.
Yeah, there's so many hurdles with this industry. I truly don't think that most people have a grasp on like what it takes to be a part of the cannabis industry. And like knowing all of this knowledge that you know now, all of these hurdles, all of the heartache and headache with being in this industry, would you recommend that somebody be a part of it?
Like a young entrepreneur
that's
getting
tough,
started.
because we've been kicked in the nuts I don't know how many times in this industry from day one. And it's bad when our mindset now is, okay, what's tomorrow going to bring? It's
day to
something
day.
every day. It's the tax people saying, oh, wait, you got this that you're subject to. And we're like, well, what? Okay. Oh, wait, by the way, we noticed you weren't paying this tax. And like, well, we didn't even know about that tax. What about that? And we've been in the last few months hit with so many different things. And especially here at Moonflower, we're one of the most transparent companies I've ever seen. When we were building out this facility, we would call the regulators and say, hey, we're doing this and we want to do it the right way. So do you mind being on board with us during construction?
Right.
And so we're that group. We want to know. And, luckily the Department of Ag, when we had our facility, wanted to use it as their training ground for their inspectors. So,
right.
We're all about that, educating people. But the industry, it seems like every day something new comes up. And unfortunately, there's bad actors, in the industry that the new hemp and kratom law last year that went into effect June 9th, their heart was in the right place.
Yeah. Regulation is okay.
Was in the right place. They were going after the companies selling these nerd ropes and Dorito cannabis things and all kinds of stuff, just targeting young people. So their heart was in the right place. They had the right mindset. The problem is they didn't educate themselves on the whole industry and what it would do, the way they passed the law, how it would affect the farmers that were growing it with no ill intentions of doing any of that. So they just put an 11% privilege tax on anybody in the industry selling. That was their compromise. First, they said, oh, this is so bad for everybody. Oh my gosh, people are just going to die and fall over and bodies will be piled in the streets. So we got to ban all this. And then they got half educated about it.
Yeah. So
then the politicians are being pulled from the antis and they're being griped at from people like us saying, look, you got to look into this. So they're like, their compromise. Okay, we'll keep it legal. We'll just tax the hell out of it.
We just need more money.
Yeah, we just need more money. And the way they get away with it, they always say, oh, okay, well, X amount of percent of the money we get from CBD sales is going to go to help fund the hotlines, the addicts, different,
which is just a part of the stigma anyway. Like that's confusing.
What did that do for us?
Yeah.
That's how they make them feel good about it. Yeah. And then it's funny because then a lot of that tax also goes for more enforcement. They threw the ABC in it, the Alcohol Beverage Control Commission. They said, oh, by the way, your inspectors now got to help enforce this. And they're like, we can't even do our jobs. We're so unmanned and we're so behind underpaid, everything. Too bad. Sorry, you're now involved.
Yeah.
And here's some money to help do that, which is never enough money to hire the people they need.
Right.
So, it's just crazy. And that was their compromise for something they were trying to say was so bad. Okay, well, we'll just keep it legal. We'll just tax it. Oh, wait, if it's that bad, I'd rather hear the argument that it's so bad, let's stop it. Than, oh, it's so bad, so we'll just tax it.
Yeah, that's so bad. Let's make money off of it.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's taxed worse than alcohol.
Yeah.
And at least, I don't know. Alcohol is bad for you. There's nothing good about alcohol. Mm-hmm. Not saying I don't drink a beer now and then, obviously, but they're all happy about that.
Yeah.
You go down to all the parties during legislature that are thrown by different lobbyists, the hospitality rooms, they call them. Every one of them's got alcohol. Mm-hmm. But go down there and have an argument about hemp or about,
about CBD products.
Products or something. Oh, that's bad. Well, wait, you're getting hammered on Maker's Mark right now and you're telling me CBD's bad?
Yeah.
So it's just education and politics.
Yeah, it's a difficult industry. Yes. I mean, me personally, I love helping people and I love like that portion of this industry. And I'm like, that's the part that I'm really proud of and proud to be a part of. But I don't know that I would ever recommend like a new entrepreneur to take this on.
Wait until this is figured out before you.
Yeah, it gives you a lot of heartache.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, an entrepreneur, if you're getting in this early, you're very speculative.
Yeah.
You're hoping for the change that we want to see.
Yeah.
You're hoping for the education, but you got to have a strong back and broad shoulders, because they're going to tackle you. They're going to kick you. They're going to try to take you down. And it's riding that out until people wisen up and the laws change. And it's tough sometimes.
Sure.
You know, we've all thought, what in the hell are we doing in this business?
Like, why did we do this?
Why?
We've asked the question, why didn't we just open up a brewery? It would have been so much easier to just sell alcohol to people.
Brews, right?
Yeah.
But, you know, so no, would I recommend right now somebody get into it? No, not at all. But if you got the stomach for it and the broad shoulders to ride it out, I think it's going to be great.
Yeah.
You know, and it's an industry where you can actually look and say, man, we're helping people.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, sure, people are some of them just doing it to get high, you know, just like people are drinking beer to get drunk. Mm-hmm. But we're also helping people.
Yeah, we're making a difference.
And that's really what we're focused on here.
For sure. I thought you were going to say something.
No, I was just agreeing.
But yeah, I think we've covered pretty much all topics.
Heck yeah. Thanks for being our podcast guest, Dad.
Yeah,
no
Dad.
worries. No
I
worries.
think you might be built for podcasts. Maybe that should be your next venture.
Yeah.
Heck yeah.
That's your next thing.
The Queen Cast.
The Queen Cast. All right.
No, I'm proud of you guys for what you're doing. You know,
Thanks, Dad.
you're
Dad.
getting the word out. You're educating people, and I'm totally supportive of it. Very, very proud. Very proud of what you're doing.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Dad.
Yeah. And I'm not just saying that because we're on a podcast.
Yeah. Thanks. Thank you guys so much for listening. If you're hearing this, you've made it to the end of our podcast episode. And for that, we want to give you 20% off of your next Moonflower order. All you have to do is apply podcast 20 at the end of your checkout.